My name is Peter Dedman. I'm chair of the trustees of the Brighton Natural Health Foundation charity. We've got 7 short presentations tonight, followed by a Q&A session. So I'd like to start my bit with a brief account of the history behind the foundation. Brighton Natural Health Centre was founded by Infinity Foods Workers Co-op in 1982 in a building in Regent Street, just around the corner from the Infinity shop. Infinity Foods itself was set up because we believed that basing a diet on natural foods and organic foods was good both for individual health and for planetary health, for the welfare of the planet. And the health centre was an extension of that vision. We had discovered from our own experience and from our respect for traditional knowledge, especially Asian traditions, that practices such as yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, and so on, could help us improve our health, our physical health, our mental health, and our emotional health. At the time, so this is 40 years ago, these were pretty niche activities. Even yoga was barely known, and it would have been hard to find anyone in the medical professions who would give them the time of day. But our confidence in them has been rewarded by a steadily accumulating body of evidence that they do exactly that. They do significantly or can significantly benefit physical, mental, and emotional health. Sadly, the economic hit of the pandemic and the costs of running the building meant that we had to close at the beginning of the year. But the good news is that an even broader vision has emerged. So we love our National Health Service. We understand how badly it is underfunded and how pressured its staff are, how they often sacrifice their own health and well-being to deliver such wonderful care to us when we are sick. But I do sometimes wonder if it should be called National Sickness Service, because most of its resources go into firefighting disease. Political arguments about funding the NHS are inevitable, but they do risk obscuring one glaring fact that applies to health departments throughout the world. The fact is that although more and more of us are living longer, we're not living healthily long lives, but ones that are often burdened by ill health, disability, and chronic disease, particularly cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia, cancer, debilitating anxiety and depression, as well as the obesity that often underlies these diseases. And some of them are beginning to strike at younger and younger ages. Even more concerning is the fact that most of these diseases are predicted to double over the next couple of decades. And doubling of the incidence of those diseases means a doubling of costs. The truth is that medical treatment is largely unable to cure them once they've developed. And the best that can usually be managed, can be offered, is expensive lifelong management. No wonder health services everywhere are creaking at the seams. Looking ahead, it's abundantly clear that no economy in the world however much it wants to pump into its health services, will be able to spend its way out of this approaching tsunami. The smart, the common sense, the logical future of medicine, therefore, has to prioritise prevention. And the sooner we wake up to that fact, the better. There are many causes of chronic disease, including poverty, inequality and deprivation, but one of the main culprits is modern lifestyles. Lack of movement and exercise, the abandonment of traditional diets, toxic social media and isolation. And wherever these modern lifestyles spread through the world to developing countries, chronic disease follows in their wake. Now, some of these causes can only be fixed at government level, local or national government level, but there's an important role to be filled by lifestyle change. It's great that this is increasingly understood, and especially in the field of exercise, there are more and more projects in the community to get people moving. But for all kinds of reasons, not everybody is attracted to going to the gym or doing sports-based exercise, and even walking, one of the best forms of exercise, is not accessible to everyone. The main offering of Brighton Natural Health Foundation, what we specialise in, comes under the umbrella term of mindful movement. That includes yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, Pilates, mindful dance, kind of includes meditation as well. And just about everybody can do these at one level or another, from childhood right through to old age. And the overwhelming evidence is that these are powerful tools to benefit all-round health, with a special and significant impact on mental health. All of us who practice them know this. Free from the economic burden of trying to keep a building going in the centre of town, it's our ambition now, with the launch of the Brighton Natural Health Foundation, to offer these transformative practices to the community, to communities in every part of the city, in cooperation with any and every organisation willing to work with us, especially social prescribers. We have a whole roster of vetted and experienced teachers, and as a charity, we're transparent in our lack of commercial motive. We believe that what we offer can reach parts that other forms of exercise and similar cannot. We believe we are the missing link. The motto of Brighton Natural Health Centre was healthy individuals, healthy communities and a healthy planet. Now we want to work with others and add in towards a healthy city. It goes without saying that we need funds to support this work, and we are in the process of putting forward a whole range of funding bids. But at the moment, we're finding it challenging to run our existing projects, and that's obviously an invitation for you, if you're feeling generous, to donate to help keep those classes going. And finally, I need to mention that we are looking for more trustees to sit on our board. So if you're interested, if you speak to me or one of our other trustees who are wearing badges. Thanks. So I'd now like to hand over to Ryan Edwards. Ryan is Healthy Lifestyles Manager at Brighton and Hove City Council. He's been supporting community sport and health improvement for 18 years and is currently developing a new physical activity strategy for the city. He's also working on himself, trying to improve his surfing in the giant Brighton waves.
Thank you, Peter. Cool. So, yeah, my name's Ryan. I work for the Healthy Lifestyles team, as Peter just said, and it's brilliant to be here to support this event and look at the opportunities that the Brighton Natural Health Foundation can bring to the city, because I think there's lots of benefits that, as Peter's saying, mindful movement can bring into our communities, and for people who are experiencing real challenges in the city, the opportunity to take part in exercise and physical activity that can be such a release for people is a powerful thing, and we want to be supporting that as much as possible. Just want to run through a bit of context, I guess, in Brighton and Hove. So we know that the population in the city is increasing, it's growing, and we also know that the population in Brighton and Hove is ageing. Compared to 2011, when the latest census in 2021 said that there's less people that are aged 20 to 34 in the city, and there's a growth in the number of people that are aged between 50 and 74. And forecasts suggest that by 2030, there'll be nearly 30% more people aged above the age of 75 living in the city. Whilst life expectancy in the city has been gradually increasing over the past few decades, we know that healthy life expectancy for people living in the city has fallen. On average now, a woman living in the city now can expect to live around 25% of their life in poor health, while males can expect to live around 22% of their life in poor health. And in addition to this, there are significant health inequalities across our population. For example, a woman who is living in the most disadvantaged area of the city will live around 7 years shorter than a woman living in the least disadvantaged area and have 12 fewer years of good health. Similarly, a man living in the most disadvantaged area will have around 9 years less than a man living in the least disadvantaged area and around 14 years fewer in good health. And we know that those inequalities over the last 10 years have been increasing. Driving the reduction in healthy life expectancy is the challenge of the number of people developing and living with long-term health conditions. In a recent city study, it identified that there are over 50,000 adults aged 20 and above, around 22% of the population, who live with one or more long-term health condition. 8% of adults have both a mental and a physical health condition, and if we include mild depression, that equates to around 15% of the population. And it's predicted that without scaling up efforts on prevention, there'll be around 10,500 more adults living with 2 or more health conditions by 2030. Thank you. Many health conditions which contribute to short life expectancy are preventable, as Peter mentioned. Cardiovascular disease, cancers, respiratory conditions and mental health conditions are all key priorities for the health in our city. Whilst they're often complex in their causes, we know that lifestyle factors such as smoking, lack of exercise, excessive drinking of alcohol and poor diet can be key factors in the development of many of these long-term conditions. And there's opportunity to have a significant impact by prioritising prevention. So physical activity has been described by the Chief Medical Officer as a wonder drug. It can help us reduce depression, it can reduce our risk of cancer, coronary heart disease and falls as we get older. And with the ability to both help prevent long-term conditions from emerging and also to support people to manage long-term conditions they may already have, the evidence for its benefits to our health and well-being is compelling. But physical activity is not just a health issue. It brings people together to enjoy shared activities, contributes to building stronger communities as people spend time with others, building friendships, trust and social networks that can empower them to feel happier and more resilient. In Brighton and Hove, we're one of the more active cities generally in the country, with around 7 out of every 10 adults undertaking around 150 minutes of activity, which is recommended each week. But we know that 1 in every 5 adults in the city are inactive and do less than 30 minutes per week. And this increases the risk of poor health and developing the long-term health conditions. And when we look at the insight on children and young people in the city, fewer than half are doing the recommended hour a day, and that has the potential to increase the likelihood of poorer health in the future. We also know that there are some groups that are much less likely to be active. People who are unemployed, older adults, females, people living with a disability or impairment, and people from some ethnic minority backgrounds are all more likely to be inactive. And when we look across the city, we can see there are real differences between different neighbourhoods. And in our more disadvantaged areas of the city, as many as 1 in 4 people are currently inactive, doing little or no exercise each week. And that's compared to around 1 in 10 in some of our more affluent neighbourhoods. So we must really look at thinking about how we can empower people in those communities to be able to move more and build physical activity into their life. Last summer, as part of the work to develop a new physical activity strategy for the city, we spoke to around 800 people to get their perspectives on opportunities available in the city. It was clear that being physically active was important to people, and just over half of the people responded felt that there are lots of opportunities available for them in the city. However, less than half felt that opportunities were easy for them to access. And those people who are living with a long-term health condition or disability, carers and people identifying as LGBT+ within our survey were all less likely to agree that opportunities were easy for them to access, and less likely to agree that they felt able to lead a physically active lifestyle. We asked people what would help you to be more active. Affordability and cost was a key issue for most people. And when we looked at the results from people that were less active, there were people were particularly looking for activities that catered for their needs. So catered for their age, catered for their ability level, or catered for their health needs. Less active people are also keen to see more opportunities available in their local community that they feel able to access, and wanted better information from people about how their needs could be supported through an activity. The pandemic has had a big impact on the city, and it had a big impact on activity levels in the city, as you can see from this chart. Fortunately, we are seeing signs of activity levels returning to pre-pandemic levels, but it's important to note that that isn't uniform across all groups, and groups that were less active before the pandemic are seeing a slower return to pre-pandemic levels, and people on low incomes are actually seeing an increase in their levels of inactivity. We live in challenging times for lots of people in the city. As we come through the pandemic, the impacts of this are still being felt in our communities, and this is being exacerbated by the cost of living crisis, the rise of food banks, and the pressure that people are finding living daily life in the city. We also have to look ahead and see the future impacts of climate change and how that could play out amongst our communities too. And that each of those threats brings a real risk of widening inequalities and worse health outcomes for people in our city. But there is opportunities here. The vast majority of people in the city that we spoke to valued physically being active, valued the benefits it could bring to their health. And alongside that appetite for people to be more active, there's a wide range of organisations, instructors and groups in the city that are keen to offer their support. And the challenge is to ensure that the opportunity is there at the right time and in the right place, and delivered in a way that meets the needs of people in the city who are right now finding it harder to be active, so that we can all best support them to have the best chance of a healthy and happy life. And I think this is where the Brighton Health Foundation can really fit in and can be that network to bridge between communities, organisations, instructors who are practising mindful movement and are able to support communities in the city and help develop those links and help target the activities and enable it to reach the people who could most benefit. Thank you.
So the next presentation is from Charlotte Watts, who's a trustee of the foundation, but unfortunately can't be here tonight for personal reasons, so she's made a little video, which I very much hope is going to work. So Charlotte is an award-winning nutritional therapist with nearly 20 years' experience and a senior Yoga Alliance yoga teacher and trainer. She's an author of several books, including Good Mood Food and Yoga Therapy for Digestive Health and the De-Stress Effect.
Hello, I'm Charlotte Watts, and I'm very sorry I can't be there with you tonight, particularly as a trustee of Brighton Natural Health Foundation. I'm sorry I can't be there because of personal reasons, but I'm certainly there in spirit, particularly as I did my first ever yoga class with Louise Becklin at Brighton Natural Health Centre in, I think, 1996, and then went on to teach there for over 10 years. And very much for me, being able to be part of taking this work forward as Brighton Natural Health Foundation is really picking up the spirit of the type of stuff I was teaching there, the type of stuff I do as a profession, and certainly got me to move through a journey from a quite profound illness and chronic fatigue that I had from my teens. So my journey has been very much through, I'm a nutritional therapist and I'm a yoga teacher, and I train teachers in somatic, therapeutic, trauma-informed work. So this ability to be able to take such practices and a varied degree of how people can engage in modalities that are really supportive for both their sense of community and their healing is really to be able to recognize the depth in which this coming into ourselves, not what we can do or achievements in terms of physicality, but really fostering our ability to be in the present moment, what far-reaching effects we know that has through various research, through anecdotal evidence, and I'm sure for you personally from really having experienced that, hence you're probably here. So I've got a course on the new portal, the new website for Brighton Natural Health Foundation on mindful and somatic yoga, which is 3 practices that were filmed in Brighton Natural Health Centre to help support that work. So please do sign up to those. And that really is an example. They are, example practices of how mindful movement, whatever we might call that, whatever nature that takes, has such a profound effect for our ability to not just regulate our nervous system in terms of supporting our mental health and bringing down our stress levels, but really that ripples through all aspects of health and particularly meets the crisis that we have in the modern world in terms of psychosocial stress and the links to degenerative disease that we see. So these kind of chronic inflammatory conditions that might be things that we see as a more atopic nature, things like asthma, eczema, hay fever, allergies, etc. But also are the things that are much more of that longer pronounced inflammatory nature, like osteoporosis, cancer, and a whole host of other things, including heart disease, that are really part of often the experience of the modern human. And we know that coming into mindful presence, bringing down heightened responses in the nervous system, also bring down heightened inflammatory responses, and that low-grade inflammation that is such a part of so many conditions. And that also really helps us to bring down the effects of overwhelm, of agitation, of trauma, in that there's a recognition that staying up in protective survival responses is such a part of our mental and physical health problems, and really coming into this sense of cohesion and this sense of compassion with others is a wonderful, wonderful way that we can not just support our health, but really engage with our community as a whole. So that's really what I am so pleased that you all are meeting there to do. And just sorry I can't be with you. And I know a lot of you in the audience, and I really hope to catch up with you and meet those that I haven't met before. So have a lovely evening and take care. Do go on the website and try out mine and other free courses on there. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Can I just emphasize something that came across in that video? On our website, we have many, many hours of free educational materials. Short, bite-sized videos, little bits of yoga and qigong, long talks about various health matters, ecological talks, all kinds of really brilliant speakers, and we have some complete courses, yoga for menopause, qigong and more. So that's all freely accessible. Okay, can I? Great. Delighted to invite Adam Fazakli to speak. Adam's GP in central Brighton, who says he brings the knowledge and wisdom of Eastern philosophy to local NHS organisations.
Wow, that was quite a big introduction. I didn't hear it sounding like that when I sent that email to Peter, but there we go. So yeah, thank you very much for being here, and thanks to Peter for setting this up. It's great to see so many people here, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been really trying to make a positive impact in our community, and I think I certainly have felt that in the last couple of years. We've really been moving forward in lots of ways, and that has led us to be, I think, at the beginning of a huge shift in the way we approach things in the NHS and in our communities. And I'm going to say just a few words on that shift, really. The shift is towards meta-modern values. If you haven't heard that term, it's well worth looking up. But these values are where we put the psychological health and well-being at the forefront of our communities. And my role, or my dream, is to try and bring that into the NHS. And that's what we're trying to do. The reason we're trying to do that is because our current model is not working. We've heard lots from all our speakers today about how the current medical system hasn't quite got things right. And we've been treating people for a long time with the same techniques and the same processes, especially with mental health. And the sort of model has been, we've got individuals who are ill, having symptoms, and they need to be medicated to be improved and to try and help them along their path. And the meta-modern value is about understanding that we're all part of a social fabric, and we should actually listen to people's symptoms and start to reflect on what's happening in our society and what's driving all the anxiety, all the depression, and all the problems that we're having, and really trying to look at what's causing that. And because the current model does not focus on the causes at all. And we've heard lots of the causes. We've heard loneliness, we've heard trauma, and that's sort of my big interest is understanding how much trauma there is in our society. And it's not just big T trauma, it's also little t trauma, as Gabor Mate says. And what he's talking about there is actually just how some people every day feel threatened, feel stressed, and it might be people's work or people's home life that are causing all sorts of health conditions. And it's only if we look at those and start to really examine those and reflect on those, will people's health improve. And that's what we're trying to do in central Brighton. And so I'm leading sort of 9 practices in the centre of the city, and what we're trying to do is we're setting up community groups around all sorts of venues, some here and some out in East Brighton. And at these community groups, we're offering drop-in services, things like yoga, qigong, mindfulness, for patients who can't afford it. And at these drop-ins, we're offering sort of trauma-informed discussions, so really trying to help people understand what's the root cause of their problems, and trying to offer them some support, because that's kind of what we've lost when we've moved away from more traditional cultural things. We sort of live in a big city where people still feel lonely, and so people haven't got the support to get through the difficult times that they've been through. So that's what we're trying to do. So we've set them up, we've got people coming, and it's going really well. But the long-term vision is that actually we train up some of the sort of patients in the area to help look after each other with a bit of a supporting hand with the NHS. It is a bit novel, but we do believe in it, and we think it fits with all the values that we've mentioned here, and we're looking forward to try and coordinate some of the things that I see around here with the NHS, and because there is a big breakdown between tertiary services, charities and such, and NHS services. The links are quite difficult, and I know Together Co and other social prescribers, that's kind of their role, but we want to try and really provide that link more and more, and hopefully improve things at a community level. So if anyone is interested in taking part or wanting more information, please come and speak to me or just send me an email. I'd love to talk about that at any time. And yeah, I think we've mentioned how we've got an environmental sort of imperative, a moral and a financial imperative to start to change things. And yeah, hopefully this is part of the beginning today. So yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, Adam. It's really exciting to think of 9 GP practices working together in this way. Great. So our final speaker is Joanna, or Jo Martindale. Jo is Chief Executive of the Hangleton and Knoll Project, a nationally recognised model of good practice in community development, youth work and adult education. Jo has worked in community projects in the city for many years.
Thank you. I've got no idea how to...
So just, no, don't touch just that. This one.
Cool, lovely. Well, you know who I am because I've been introduced, so we can pass on from that. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Hangleton and Knoll project. It's a resident and community-led project, and we're in our 40th birthday year. In the west of the city, if you looked at Ryan's map, you'd have seen an area of significant deprivation. So in amongst affluent Hove are some of the most deprived areas in the country. We are called a Core 20 area, but in fact there are parts of the estates that are in the 10% most deprived. And I think for many people in the city, they live in the coastal strip, and they forget that actually our city goes out really far to the east and really far to the west, and then extremely high up north, that it takes a very, extremely long time to get from the top end of Hangleton or Mile Oak down to the seafront. So, and the fringe of the city doesn't tend to have the services and facilities that, if you live a bit more centrally, that you enjoy. So that's businesses, but also generally charities operate from the centre of town. Our hospital is on one side of the city, etc. So 40 years ago, residents came together to try to meet some of their own needs, and it's quite something that we are still there now, very much grassroots, very much asset-based. And I've put about the funding, but yes, we are funded, and that is good. Ryan said a lot about health inequality, so I don't want to kind of go back over that again, but there are some particular things about the west of the city that you might not know. For example, the Knoll estate has 5 times more carers than any area in the city, or the least. That was recent census, and what that shows you is that there's so much long-term health problems, but that's both mental and physical health. And I think that geographic isolation that I mentioned is important too, because I think people don't realise that if you're reliant on bus services, and we do have, even though it's miles away from anywhere, very low car ownership, it can take you, if you want to get a bus to the centre of town from the top end, you have to take the estate bus and then 2 others. So it can be an hour and a half to get anywhere. It's a 3-hour round trip without you having actually gone anywhere. Oh, and I will mention digital exclusion too, because so much that we all do, and particularly post the pandemic, and you mentioned resources, so much is available for people who are online, but we have about 20 to 25% of the houses on our estate have no Wi-Fi contract, so people are either relying on data on their phones or they don't have any devices at all. I think I promised to speak about hub and spoke. Hangleton Knoll project doesn't do what it does. We have a huge range of activity. We said community development, youth work and learning, and that doesn't really cover the about 70 events and groups and activities that happen every week. We've got very high numbers of older people living alone and of young people and children living in poverty. And the groups and services tend to meet the needs of those groups. And the project also works with about 80 Brighton organisations in partnership. So as we talked about earlier, Together Co is one of those, but we also work with a Healthy Lifestyle team, Albion in the community. And the reason we do that is because people find our community what they call hard to reach, but actually that we can bring that reach because the networks are there and very secure. And by working with us, we can make sure that our community benefits from the specialisms that others provide. So in the case of the Yoga Foundation, we're potentially a spoke to their hub. It's called a hub and spoke model. So that's what that means. The specialism comes from the yoga hub. The reach comes from the networks in the community and people in the community deciding what they want, when they want it, and how. So you can see from the slide, we have a fantastic teacher called Indy. She stayed with us all the way, and she is a colleague of Davies here. And we've grown the group to being from a tiny little group to a regular group of 18 meeting. But I believe over the period of the project, nearly 40 people have benefited, and very few of them have ever attended a yoga class before. And it's interesting hearing the GP talk about sustainability and how you build sustainability in. Well, one of the ways we've been doing it in communities for many years is by constituting groups and making them independent. We don't hold on to everything that we do. So this group is now constituted itself and bidding for its own money, and maybe will be paying the Yoga Foundation directly for the teacher if successful in a couple of bids that it's putting through. So that's the kind of model, and the Hangleton Knoll project sits there for when something goes wrong, when the group runs out of funding, helping develop the new thing, supporting the volunteers in their roles. This is one of the members of the class, and it was funny because I sent these slides and then I realised that maybe although she'd given permission, she might not actually want the slides sent out, so I then chopped her head off. So she's anonymous so it is a funny old picture, but she was one of the original group, and I'm not going to read the story, but I hope you can read it up there, because the classes were free to start with, and in fact they've just moved to being £2 a person a session when the group constituted themselves. And we know this in the community. £3 is the price point. If you go beyond £3, you're unaffordable. 2 is nice. So 2 is what the group went for, and that will sort of again help the sustainability as we go forward. But anyone that didn't have the money, they're not going to not be allowed to do the yoga class. But so far, so good with that. And I think the fact it's just down the road, and it's the very opposite of a yoga in a yoga studio. I mean, I do yoga. I've done yoga for years and years and years. And that we've all been to different yoga classes that are different levels and variations of friendly and accessible for people whose bodies don't move in a certain way or fit a stereotype. And Indy, I think one of the things in having Indy has been that she can really work with that and make people feel included and safe, whatever they their standard of yoga is, which is all improving all the time. These guys didn't mind, and it's not such a personal story, so I'm going to end with them because they're not your usual yoga types, but actually they're committed members of the groups, and I'm really pleased that we have attracted some men to the group. We are thinking going forward with the group about whether we want to do more stuff that would be men only, but so far the mixed group, this has been a really, really good class, and yeah, everybody really does feel welcome, even the guys. So I'm delighted to be here this evening. I've been working with Davey a little while, thinking through this. The coming together with the Health Foundation just gives everything a really good launch and a sense of history. I hope there are going to be the kind of affordable community yoga classes that we're doing in Hankleton and Knoll everywhere in the city for all different groups of people, because that really is the vision, isn't it? You shouldn't need to have to be able to afford 15 quid a class or 12 quid a class to be able to get the benefits of yoga. And I guess that's why we're all here this evening. So thank you for letting me tell you a little bit about our work.